Hey everybody, it's me, Undead Viking. I want to take some time out of your day to talk to you about this game. It is called Perdition's Mouth, the Abyssal Rift. I am in gamer heaven this year. It seems like every time I turn around, somebody is coming up with an awesome fantasy-themed board game for me to play. And I've enjoyed a ton of them, and this one I'm enjoying a lot as well. I'm going to show you how to play the game, or at least give you a brief overview, and then we'll come back here and I'll tell you exactly what I dig about it and why it's a little bit different from some of the other ones that are on the market, and why I think you know, people that are going to say, well, I already own Descent, or I already own, I just backed Sword and Sorcery, why should I get this? I'm going to tell you why you should get this, because this is a neat, awesome new spin on this wonderful, wonderful theme. So let me show you how to play, and then we'll come back here and I'll tell you a little bit more about Perdition's Mouth. As can be expected, Perdition's Mouth has a lot going on, and there's quite a few rules. But after you play the game, you're going to find out that the game actually moves really smoothly. And this is definitely one of those games that once you play a couple of rounds, the game starts clicking, and you just hardly ever actually go back to the rules, unless it's just to look up a certain effect or a certain instance of a certain power that happens rarely. But regardless, this is an adventure game, and you're going to be, I've set up a very basic. This is one of the basic beginnings. This is the side entrance adventure where our intrepid explorers are trying to break into this temple to try to figure out what's going on. And depending upon the difficulty, you can actually set up the side entrance, which is kind of like the secret entrance to the temple, or like the main entrance where you're going to fight more foes. But I've set up the easier one. In this case, the side entrance is over here. And what the heroes are trying to do is they're trying to escape, trying to get to the other side and go down to the next level of the dungeon to kind of figure out what's going on at this secret temple, and you know, trying to root out the evil and destroy the cultists and their horrible like insectoid spawn that they're creating. But regardless, so there's these guys out here. There's an acolyte, which is kind of a lower level guy, which really probably won't fight the heroes unless you take him out. He's only got a hit point, so he's pretty easy to take out, but unless you take him out, he's going to be running and trying to escape to that location there. And if they escape, they actually raise the threat level of the dungeon. And the threat level starts out normally at 1, plus the number of heroes that you have. If it's like the second or third story in the campaign, the threat level will increase as it goes on. So in this instance, the first one, the threat level will be 1, plus the number of heroes. So you're playing with 3 people. It would be like a threat level of 4. The threat level determines a lot of things, but most importantly, it determines how many creatures can spawn when they do a spawning point. So you want to keep the threat level low, because you don't want to get overrun with creatures coming in to fight you. So the big thing there is I've set it up. There's these 3 guards. There's a treasure chest over here, and you notice the treasure chest is like over off the path, you know. And your goal is to get to this location. So your party kind of has to decide if it's worth it, you know, to you know, branch out and go for those things. I should mention just a couple things that you maybe don't see. There's like these little symbols here. Those mean that those spots are full of rubble, and they'll cost an extra action point to enter. These here are arrow slits, because the guards actually have blow darts, and so they can poison the players with, and so they can actually see through those little arrow slits. It's just a little added bonus that the evil guys have. And so you set this up depending upon like the adventure you're doing. So here's, like it says, you know, the side entrance. It gives you the basics. If you're going to play on a hard level, it tells you some additions as far as the hard level goes. But then it tells you like this setup. It says the entrance is at EC, and you probably can't see it, but there's these little letters here. So lowercase e, uppercase C, and so you would like say, okay, the entrance is there, you know, so you know, and so then that determines the locations of the guards and all the other things that you need to do. It also states the spawn. So in this case, there are 2 acolytes, 2 guards, and 2 summoners that are part of the primary spawn. It's a circle, important to note, and the secondary spawn is a square, and it's 2 acolytes and 3 summoners. And there's the reserve, which would be 2 acolytes and 2 bone worms, a couple of the awful creatures, the insectoid creatures that the cult is creating or summoning or whatever. And so, as the game progresses, you will have monsters spawn, and so what happens is it'll tell you they're taking the primary spawn or the secondary spawn, and the players do kind of get to pick, but a lot of times there'll be so many that are spawning that it won't matter. You know, so you'll just be grabbing a bunch of them anyway. And the reserve, what happens, like, you will sometimes take creatures out of the reserve and place them into one of the spawns, and so it's kind of like they're on their way, if you will. So, okay. But anyway, so, I got several of these, as far as, like, here's, like, actually, like, through the main entrance. It's the hard version. You can see, there's 3 guards and 2 acolytes, and, there's, as far as it's a little more difficult, all the doors in the room are locked and things like that. And there's also, several other things, let's see here, learn your limits, the small nest, highway to the nest, through the corpses. So, I mean, there's lots of different adventures and lots of different campaigns that are being created with the game. And like, literally, I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg here. One of the cool things about this is that your heroes don't start on the board. They actually have to appear on the board. So like the first round, the first time they ever take a move action, they're actually going to come and hit the entrance, and they're going to come in. So they're not actually on the board yet. And so when you set up the game, each person, as far as their hero goes, they're going to get a hero deck of cards, and this is Bastion, the fighter. And so they have this deck of cards, and they have some numbers on them, and that'll help them do certain effects, but also, like, they'll have certain powers and whatever. And each person will pick a character, as you probably well know. Any kind of any fantasy game worth its merit has a character, and so you get a cool character sheet. Olizabal, the dwarf priest, an elf magus, a halfling priest, and a human fighter. So you can kind of see, he's like a range fighter. You can see he's got a little crossbow there, and so you can kind of see that the little symbol there determines what type of character they are. So looking at Bastion, since I just grabbed those guys' cards, you can see that he has a special ability, which is Cleave. Mighty Swing allows you to maim several foes at once. You may attack one foe, and if your attack hits, immediately make another attack against a foe in range. You haven't attacked yet this turn. And so adding +2 defense and so on and so forth. So you can do it. You'll notice then that there are these things where it says he starts out at 6 as far as his hit points go, and then lowers down. And as he takes damage, like, his stats will decrease. So he starts out with 6 action points. That's what this is. His range for his attacks is always going to be 1. He's a melee fighter. But his attack value, 4, it decreases, and so does his defense value, and it slowly goes down. Pretty self-explanatory. Just to kind of show you, like, maybe show you the elf magus character. You'll notice, like, doesn't have as many hit points, so it, pretty Fragile. Their attack value is low, but they're going to be using their spells that they have instead of actually like walking up and hitting things. They have 5, 4, 4, and 2, 1, 0. So pretty cool. And you notice how they have a special power of being able to blink and teleport. So kind of cool. Also, like I said, if you have, like, if you're playing at a hard level, whenever you're about to receive aiding, you draw, you're too proud to receive it. So it adds a little, so if you want to increase the difficulty of a situation, you can definitely do that. So, and I should have mentioned, when I was showing Bastion, let me pull out his character card again. So, up here on the top, you can see that he starts off with 4 cards, and he has a maximum of 6 cards in his hand at any time. You get those 4 cards, and you don't ever get to draw cards until you do what's called a rest action, which allows you to recuperate and then draw more cards. And cards are very, very special. I mean, they're very powerful, and you don't ever want to use them up frivolously, if you will. But I'll get more into that in just a little bit. I want to show you a couple other quick things before I actually show you just some real basic mechanisms as far as how fighting works. Like I said, I'm not going to really go into everything here just because, like I said, there's tons of rules, and I don't want this to be a huge, long rule set part of the video, if you will. So this is the monster wheel, if you will. And so you have a token that starts in the start area, and then it slowly goes around, and I'll show how that works in just a little bit. But when it stops on each of these spots, certain things happen. So here, this is the circles. This is the spawning. This is making them move. This is having them fight, and so on and so forth. And here's the secondary spawn. So, you know, you have those things, and you can see that here's the threat meter, you know, and so like you incrementally, so if we had, say, 4, you'd start at 1, and then you'd add 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're still at 1 threat, but as soon as you go to another threat, and so you can see how it increases slowly, and that can happen, and it happens pretty quickly, actually, as you're playing the game. So that's how that works. And it's, you know, it's kind of like a rondel, I guess, in a weird way, but, you know, not quite. Now I'm going to show you this, and you notice how I have these tokens that are already on there. I'm just going to spit those off because I'm just want to be able to show this to you. So this is the hero rondel, if you will, and you notice that there's these little dots in these spots. Okay, so when the game comes out, it's going to have pegs that you're going to put into those spots, so you can actually, like, they'll be held in place, and each character will have a peg that represents them. And what you're going to do is you're going to put them in these spots, and then when it comes time for your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to move. You have to move your peg at least one spot, but then you have to determine like how many spots you're doing. And depending upon the action points, that's the maximum number of spots that you can move. You get to skip over the ones that already have a peg in them, but then that's a spot you can't use. So if you're in a situation where, you know, somebody's already used like the one special that's here, like that's eaten up, you can't use it, you know, and like the rest action as well has a 1 spot, so like you have to time those really well. You know, and some of these things like attack, yeah, it has 3, you know, so you have those 3 in there, and so you have sprint and defend and what have you. And so when it's your turn, and I'm not going to have any other pegs or anything on here, but you have to make up your mind. And the thing is that you don't want to use up all your action points, because your action points can actually then be used to assist your action. So, like, say I wanted to attack, and I'm here, and let me say, like, you know, there was one there. It's going to be kind of tough to show you. And then, you know, but this one is blank. So, but I don't want to do a special. I want to do an attack. So I'd have to use 1 and then 2 actions. But then if I had like 5 action points, I'd have 3 action points left over that I then could use to augment my action when it came to my turn, if I had an attack that was going to happen. So the game progresses just how you probably can assume, since it's a cooperative game. Each person is going to take an action, and they're going to run their turn, and then the enemies are going to have a turn, and then you just repeat that. And most, if not all, actions are going to be, like, when you determine your action from the dial, you're going to, like, so let me find Bastion here. So here's Bastion. Let's say he got up next to the Acolyte, and he's going to attack him, and I'm on the attack action on the rondel. So I say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do this attack. So let's just go ahead and take a look at what the Acolyte has. You know, this is kind of cool. Let me show you this really quick. So, like, depending when they have their action, when they move, so it says here, like, it moves a 3, and it moves towards the nearest exit, you know, because the Acolyte wants to escape. He wants to get away and then raise the threat level, because basically he's going in and he's raising an alarm. And then so, like, the Guardians, they have a movement of 4, but they want to stay at the range of 3. They want to stay within their range of their blow darts so they can be constantly harassing. So you can see here they have attacks, values, and so on and so forth. And, you know, and so that's how that works. And you'll notice that there's certain specials as far as, you know, like, this is poison. So, like, if they're successful with their attack with their blow darts, the Guardians, they'll actually, like, you know, cause you to be fatigued, and which will cause you, obviously, you know, poison, and you'll lose actions and what have you. So anyway, so as Bastion, you've drawn 4 cards. Let me just grab 4 cards here. And so then we've moved up, and we're gonna, you know, be in that position to fight. And so, you know, and then so you have these cards, and you see that they have these icons on them. So, like, this is a shield wall, that's for defense, that's not gonna help. This one has, like, all of them, so it's a burst of energy. And so, like, it's just, like, it can be used for any of the effects. And notice how, like, like, there's a foot there. Like, if you wanted, when you moved, if you wanted to move extra, you can use a card to move extra, things like that. Like, and so here you have Veteran Soldier. It has a 4. It's good for attacks. It's good for your special attack, but it's only good for 1 for aiding. Now, aiding actually happens, like, if somebody's doing an attack and you're, like, want to aid them in doing that. If you're close to them, it's easier. If you're like within one range, it affects them, and so you could play a card and you say, "I'm going to help you attack that person," and you play a card. But the further away, the less it works. So every space you're away, it reduces it by 1. And so then now we have here is like Killer Instinct, and so like it's a 5. So it's like a really powerful attack. And so you have a situation here where you're going to declare your attack on that creature or that acolyte, and you're going to try to determine what do I have to do to make sure that I'm going to kill him. Because there's no like rolls for damage. Every attack just does a point of damage, and then like you reduce that health of that creature or the person when that happens. So you have a situation here where he has, I'm looking at the wrong one, sorry. The Acolyte has a defense of 1, has an attack of 1, and it has a hit points of 1. So all you got to do is hit him, and then it would succeed. But here's the deal. He has a defense of 1, and ties go to the defender. You have to actually beat that. So if I played, like this 4, I said I'm going to attack, and I'm going to play this 4. And so now I have an attack, and then so I would add that to Bastion's ability or attack ability of 4 and an 8. So I'm probably gonna crush him as far as this attack goes. But what you have to do in any situation is you have to draw what's called you have to draw these cards that's like a response card, and mostly these are drawn for the enemies, because they're drawn for their defense and they're drawn for their attacks, but you will draw them for the characters as well in certain situations. So you draw one of these, and then it gives you a number. And so it's like, oh, it's a 4. So he would have had a defense of 4. Now, here's the cool thing, is that if I hadn't used a card, and I just said I'm attacking him with my value of 4, I'm not adding my card, I'm not doing anything, okay, fine, I'm going to go ahead and do that, I would have drawn this 4 plus the 1 would be 5, and so my attack would have failed. And I wouldn't have actually hit him. But because I spent the card, I would hit him, I would do my point of damage, and I could remove the Acolyte from the board. And that's how combat works. The big thing is that when you're trying to decide which cards you're going to use to determine like anything, up until the moment before you draw your response card, you can do whatever. People can aid you, you can use items, you can use effects, anything you want. You can play cards, you can play multiple cards. But you can't, as soon as you draw the response, and like if you drew a card that showed that you failed in that situation, you can't then add another card into the mix and say, okay, I want to succeed anyway. So you have to make sure. It's kind of like a cool little well, how much do I spend? What can I do to get this, to pull that off kind of thing. So now, going from the same experience, so like now, like after everybody's taken their turn and done that, what will happen is that then the enemies will do a turn. And so the big thing is, so you're going to draw a response card at the beginning of the monster turn. And so you draw a response card, and what you're going to do is you're going to look and see if it has this little token. And there's not this little token here. So you go, whew, that little icon isn't on that card that I just drew. Now, if the response card, let me just find one with that little symbol. Oh, there we go. So, if the response card has this little symbol, it's an eye on there, what you will do then is that the players will take 2 of the creatures that are in the reserve, and they're going to put 1 in the primary spawn and 1 in the secondary spawn pool. And then you're going to have, basically you're adding those reserves to the available creatures that are going to be showing up. Now, when you draw this, what you're going to do, like in this case I got a 4, what's going to happen is that you're going to then start going through the process of, if you only go like 1, you're going to just go 1 and that's it. But like if you have like something with 4, you're going to go through each step and do each thing for everything. So you're going to spawn, you're going to move, you're going to attack, and then you're going to move again. And you're going to do that for every single one of the creatures. There are some of those cards that actually go -1. And so if you go back, you just do the one that's, that you're going back to get. And so you would go through the process where you would spawn, and in this case, if you are spawning the insectoids, they'll either spawn from a nest, or in this case, they spawn from the exit, because that's just how this level of the dungeon is set up. But it might be a little tough to see, but there's a little trap door right there. So anything that spawns like comes from that trap door. And so like you would look and you'd see like, so you'd spawn, so then the players pick one, so they grab, probably grab another acolyte and put them there, something easy, and put them there, and then like you would move, and so all the creatures would move according to their movement of what they want to do. Remember, these guys want to get within like a range of 3, so like you'd have a situation where they go like 1, 2, they probably want to get close because they want to stay far away, and so like and you determine line of sight. He wants to get to that area over there, so he moves 2 towards the nearest exit, and then 3 to get 1. No, normally I'd have more heroes out here in this case, but I don't. So you just have to bear with. So he probably doesn't have line of sight because there's the door there, and so like that. And then you get to the attack, and so then you go through the whole attack process. Now, when enemies attack heroes, they're going to attack the closest thing first, and then they go for the weakest hero, and then they go for mage's heroes, and so forth. There's a chain. And what you're going to do then is just like you did before. You're going to take the attack value of the monster, and so like the guards have an attack value of 2, and they're going to attack the person. So when they're going to go through the attack, you're going to look at the situation and you're going to say, I have a defense of 4, and the player then can look at their cards and they can see if they have like any cards that would affect it. So they can play this, because it's got the shield, they can do that and it will raise their defense by 2 to 6. And then play this card when you take the defend action. And we're not taking the defend action, so we can't do that. So maybe we're going to play this, to raise our defense up a little bit, because we don't want the monster to get lucky. So we play that 2, we raise our defense by 2. Now notice I'm kind of burning through cards kind of a lot here, and you don't want to do that, because like the only way you get cards back is through resting. And when you rest, what you do is you just take all of your cards that are in your discard, you shuffle them back into your hand, and then you draw up to your maximum, but you don't replace the cards that are in your hand. That's very important, and I'm going to tell you why. So, and then you would draw a card for the attacker, attack level 2, so he had a 4, so he's got a 6. Well, good thing I spent that 2, because it's a 6 I'm meeting, but I also get to draw one for defense as well. So you draw, and I got another 4. That's pretty cool. I'm using up all the high numbers there. But so that attack would fail. Now, if the attack actually worked, say like I didn't spend that and he had drew that 4, I didn't spend my card, thinking that I would get lucky, because, and I'm going to just show you, it isn't all 4s in here. The most common number is 2. There's a -1, and there is a card in here, and I'm not going to be able to find it obviously, but there's a card in here that says shuffle, and when you draw that card, you actually shuffle up the entire response card deck at the end at that point. But if you get hit, you have to take a point of damage, so you're going to mark your little path down here, go to 5, you're going to see that the things are affected. In this case, I'm actually going to end up getting a fatigue or a poison token, because they use poison, so I'd have that, add that to my character, and that means I have -1 action point because of that. So not only did I lose 1 from like from getting hurt, but I also lose another 1 because of the fact that it's I'm fatigued. And then I have to draw what's called a wound card. Now the wound cards, the backs look exactly the same, and then when you draw one, it tells you something. So here we have an infestation. If you ever have 2 infestation cards in your hand, you are killed, and a insectoid monster is spawned in your square. Well, that's not good. But and so what this is it's the card that sits in your hand and eats up the available cards that you have. So you have to actually kind of play it. It's got a minus. And so you have that situation. Now, if you ever have like a clear come up and heal you, that's the only way you can discard these cards and getting them out of your hand. And there's lots of different effects in here. So like you could have, just broken nose, -2. It doesn't really affect you that much. But there are ones that are like, let me see here. Cracked skull. It's still worth 1, but you gain a fatigue token. So I mean, it's it's kind of like, it's bad, but it's not so bad. Nausea, -2 to your defense, which that stinks. And so there's things like that that are going to affect certain things, where or an eye wound. So now your range is 1. Sometimes it doesn't really matter. For Bastion, that wouldn't really matter, but for an archer, obviously that's going to be a huge deal, and that's going to be a bad thing. And so the wound cards are just that. They kind of gum up your your hand, and because they're a negative card, you're not going to want to spend them, but then you're not going to be able to draw as many cards and put them in your hand when you play. Kind of a cool little effect. One last thing before I kind of step away is that they are obviously the treasure chests. When you go to the treasure chest, you're going to draw a treasure, and these are just, as you can probably guess, like treasures that you're going to use, like, and then the treasures actually do have a designation as far as what characters can use it by the little icons that are on them. And so, and so they have different powers and different effects. Armor obviously adds to your defense. This big giant flaming hammer, adds to, like, Mighty Steel Hammer of massive size. You draw a response card and you strike with the hammer, so you get to do extra damage possibly. So there's things like that when you open up the treasure chest. And there's actually also a trap. You can draw a trap card that would blow up and possibly do damage to you and other things that are around you. So there you go. That's, like I said, a real brief overview of Perdition's Mouth and like how it works. I really like the action sequence as far as like, the kind of rondel situation where you're kind of picking and choosing and using up your action points. But like I said, you want to use those action points and save them for your actions as well. And I like the card play, the limited card actions that you have. And it's just like, it's a very tactical game, and it's very, very much a conversational game that everybody kind of works together. And I really like that aspect. But I'll talk more about that in my conclusion. Alright, thank you for sitting through that overview. Like I said, I didn't really want to go into every single itty-bitty little rule. I know you can go ahead and find the rules online if you want to go ahead and take a look at those, and you can read them. So if you wanted to actually delve a little more deep. But I gave you the real basic mechanisms, which are the rondel, if you will, the action disc, and then the cards, the response cards. And that's the random thing. Now remember I said in the instruction why this is different. There's no dice in this game. Now when somebody said, yeah, you're going to be playing this this basically Dungeons and Dragons or dungeon themed and themed board game, I think dice. I want to roll dice, but I was like, oh geez, no dice, huh? And I was a little bit worried. But after I started playing the game, I realized that it wasn't so much the dice that I have games that have dice. I have games that have that random chance, and I have those, and they're a lot of fun, and I enjoy them. But this was a different animal. This was a different situation where it wasn't so much the randomness of the dice that I was like, I didn't feel like I was missing them because of the fact that the game offered me up so many wonderful options and choices going on. I mean, it was a very nice, dark, gritty theme for one, and I've been digging that in my games. I mean, eventually somebody's gonna have to come up with a fantasy game that's a little more light, if you will. It seems like we're kind of mired in this ooh, grim and dirty world of adventure, but I mean, that's fine. I dig it. I like it. But what I love about the game, it's the cards. It's keeping those cards, and the fact that wounds aren't just hit points. They are actually something that negatively affects the mechanism that you have in the game, that actually affects what you're able to do. And I really enjoy that, and I really enjoy the fact that I feel like I'm when you take a wound, it's like it almost seems to preoccupy you because you have that, it's just sitting in your hand staring at you. And I should mention, I didn't mention this, but when you have like your maximum hand size and you draw a wound card, you have to get rid of one of your good cards at that point. And remember, like, you can't get rid of that card in your hand unless you play it. And then it just goes in your discard pile, and it goes back in. The only time you can get rid of that is if you get healed. And if you get healed, it has to be in your hand when you get healed. So it's like this, it's debilitating to get a wound. It actually kind of reminds me of like the critical hit system in Warhammer fantasy role-playing. I mean, it was just like when you got critically hit, it stunk. It stuck with you for a long time. And I can't help but think that maybe possibly the designer was kind of inspired a little bit by that role-playing game. That and the fact that, like, especially when you draw like a huge number, like you draw a 4 or 5, like I did in the gameplay, when you show that, oh, now your enemies get 4 or 5 turns of actions. Okay, now they're moving, now they're spawning, now they're attacking. I mean, it's like the monster turn is like harrowing, if you will, and it's like you're always just dreading turning over that response card to see what's on the other side. I mean, there's so much about the game that is just fun as far as like the expectation of what's going to happen. I mean, the risk reward of playing a card, or just trying to hope that like you get lucky, and like just do we make a break for the exit and just, you know, leave the chest behind, or do you want to grab that chest? And the thing is that this is a campaign, and they actually do have very good rules about, like, you know, you can get through, because the chapters of the campaign, I guess it's multiple, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever chapters, and so you don't have to play it all at one sitting, though. You get through, and then there's a save point, if you will, and you can just, then you can reboot and start up again. I mean, just the game itself, it's got wonderful choices, and very agonizing choices as well, because, like, you have to figure out, as far as, like, which cards you're going to use, which cards you're going to hold on to. You have to figure out, you know, like, what's the best use for the card, you know, and it's just, you know, it's, I have there's other games out there that I love that are fantasy based themed, the dungeon themed or whatever, and I have a lot of fun with them, but those, in a way, are you know, and I use the terminology role playing, ROLL playing, and whereas this isn't really ROLE playing, this is kind of bridging the gap a little bit of going into Euro mechanisms and introducing them to a wonderful theme, wonderful fantasy board game theme that doesn't forget about its thematic Ameritrash, if you will, roots, and it's a real good hybrid, and it's really nothing like anything else I've played, which is why, as I said, if you have Descent, if you backed Sword and Sorcery, if you have, well, insert any number of other fantasy-based games that are out there right now, with miniatures and what have you, why is this one different, and why should I own it? Well, there you go. That's the reason why. So, if you have any questions about Perdition's Mouth, I'll be happy to answer those to the best of my ability. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And, as always, this is me, the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, till next time.